Welcome into episode 193. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Christian, how are you doing?
Doing very well. How are you doing?
Good. We're both wearing hats this week.
We are both. I'm
So,
still in a hat. Crucial update
yep.
for our audio listeners. Did not get a haircut in the last week. So, which in my defense, we're recording 6 days after our last podcast. So,
Wait, no, it's. Oh, yeah. We recorded last Tuesday. That's
yeah.
right.
So I didn't have a full week to get it done. So unfortunately, it hasn't happened.
If we
It's
had
too bad.
recorded tomorrow, would you have gotten one today?
No,
Okay. Well,
I don't know when it's
you should have said
happening.
you were supposed to say yes. So,
I don't know if I've said on the podcast before, but I really hate haircuts. They're one of my least favorite things to do in the world. So I just always procrastinate a very long time on them and just let myself look very bad. And we're in that phase right now. So the
I
hat's
don't
staying
like.
on.
I just don't like the process of going to get a haircut because I feel like it's always you have to wait for a long time and then like you get all itchy and like they wash it out and everything, but like you're still kind of just like I don't know, it just feels like a whole ordeal. But then after I get after I'm done getting a haircut, I was like, yeah, I really needed to do this like 2 weeks ago. This looks so much better.
So the
But
reason I don't like it, and this is always a great thing to say when you're a podcast host, is I don't like talking to people. And I hate that they always try to talk to me. And I don't have
you,
a haircut person. I know some people have a specific person. I don't have that. And it's just always the most
I
painful conversation ever of, oh, what do you do? I do this. Cool. Where? Like I just cut the
yeah.
hair. Just cut the hair.
At
Like
this
just let me
point,
get
I
out of here.
have the same girl that cuts my hair, and if you like, it would be hilarious if anyone I knew were like to be there while I was getting a haircut because you would think that I'm like the most talkative, like social person ever because like she kind of forces me to be like she talks and like we just have a full conversation. It's like and it's not like one of those things where it's like stop talking to me. It's like actually like real like oh it's nice like cool. It's like friendly conversation, but I'm not used to that because I don't usually like to talk to people I don't know.
Yeah, I do want to clarify
So,
if you are a Pegasus podcast listener, if you ever see us out in the wild, I'm happy to talk to you. We have in the past, like
don't
don't be
talk
like,
to
oh,
me.
that's Christian. He doesn't like to talk to people, so I'm not going to say
Yeah.
anything. It's just specifically people that I don't like small talk. I can't do it. I feel like some point in life everyone was taught how to do small talk, and I just was not given that lesson, and
You missed
I
that
just
class that day.
missed it. Apparently, I was homesick
Yeah.
that day, and so I hate it. But yeah,
Well, it's funny because we just met one of our listeners. It's not his full name. I noticed he said this on Twitter recently, but Clay Pasco is his Twitter, and he actually asked us. We were doing a mailbag today, in case you didn't see the tweet. We're just gonna answer questions. He actually sent us in a question, so we have one of his questions. But we met him at the basketball game against Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, and I wish I could say it just to impress everyone because I remember he said on Twitter like that's not his last name. He shortened it because most people can't say his last name. And I think
didn't
he
know
said
that.
that because the last time he sent in a question, I said, if your name is Clay Pasco, that's a really cool name. But it wasn't his full name, apparently. But it's still
It's too
cool.
bad.
I still like it. Yeah. I don't know. Anything else? Should we get into the questions? Because we have a 10 to answer. There's a lot to answer, a lot to get through
I
here.
think we like doing these mailbag episodes every now and then since we did the first one. It was a lot of fun. I just want to say at the top of this, and we'll get into this. Our listeners are smarter than we are because some of these questions are really interesting. Like we got so many where I'm like, that's such an interesting topic. And we had to, unfortunately, we've had to cut a couple because they could kind of be full podcast topics. And both of them we may circle back to as we sort of get into the off season. But really, really awesome questions. Shout out to you
Yeah.
guys for being intelligent. That's awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate it. You also, a lot of you love to ask like multi-part questions. And when I say multi-part questions, a lot of them aren't like related questions. It's just three questions. It's
It's
not
just
it's
three
not a
different
multi-part
questions.
question. It's just three
Yeah.
questions. We have a few of those that we'll get to, but we'll start out hot. We'll start out with JP Gilbert. Is Gus the worst UCF head coach in 20 years? But he gave us the answer, so I don't know if we have to answer it. He said trick question. The answer is yes.
I guess we can just move on. I did say it's I always end the mailbag tweets with "we'll answer anything," and JP always makes me regret that. And this was another example because I don't really want to have a topic on an actual UCF podcast where we're like Gus Malzahn, worst coach ever. But here's what's interesting because I actually thought about it. For all the UCF head coaches of the last 20 years, you can kind of make a case for all of them being the worst when you actually think about it, right? Because
Can you?
Scott Frost has had one good season his entire head coaching career. And sure, they went
Yeah.
undefeated under him, but it kind of makes you wonder would that have continued if he'd stayed. Josh Heupel took over a 13-0 team and they were 6-4 by the time he left. George O'Leary was George O'Leary. Like you can actually make a case for all of them for being the worst. So it is interesting.
Well, it was funny that I looked at if I wanted to answer the question, which I don't know if I will, but if I wanted to answer it, here's what I would say. George O'Leary had a worse win percentage. He was 81 and 68, which was a 544 percentage, but he also won four conference titles and won a Fiesta Bowl. Gus is 24 and 16, which is a 600 win percentage, but hasn't won anything.
George O'Leary also took over a program with zero history of any kind. They had
Yeah,
never been to a bowl game before him. They'd never done anything before him. They'd had one
yeah.
9-2 season with Dante Culpepper. That was all they'd ever done at the FBS level. That was it. So yeah, it's
So when you
probably
say all
Heupel.
that, you think so?
I think so, and I defended Heupel at the time because I was one of the few people on UCF Twitter who understood that UCF did not have the money to fire him when everyone wanted him gone. But I just you look at the trajectory of he inherited a 13-0 team that returned everybody, and then he went 12-1, which was awesome. Then 10-3, then 6-4. Like it was just the decline each year was, and recruiting was bad under Heupel. I mean, it was I don't
Yeah.
know what would have happened if he would have stayed. I think they would have long term been fine, but they were probably 2 seasons from digging out of the hole they've gotten into with him. So I think it's Heupel.
I was at a low point, like at the end of Heupel's tenure, and I was like really just not like I was at a really low point with UCF football. And then they hired Gus, and I got really excited. And they've had some good moments over the last few years. And I think obviously the move to the Big 12 has helped. But I'm not quite as low now as I was because there's still a lot to look forward to. But as far as like I don't, and this is gonna sound dumb, but I'm just like I've never felt further away from the 2 years 2017 and 2018. Like it just feels like that was
Well, did you know
forever
that we've
ago.
actually never been further away than we are in this
Yeah,
moment?
that's why I'm saying it's gonna sound dumb that I said it because it's like, yeah, it's true. It just feels so long ago
The
because
thing
like there
about
were, I don't know, because that went the Gabriel's freshman year they went 10-3, and I felt like that was a good season. It was they finished top 25. Like
yes, that was absolutely a
two
good
of
season.
what was it? Two of the three losses, or was it all three losses were by like set combined like 7 points, I think,
The
or something
three
like that.
losses were by a combined 7 points. It was
So
to
yeah,
Cincinnati. It was Cincinnati by 3, Pitt by 1, and Tulsa by 3, if I remember right.
I do wonder, and I this is just complete hindsight because I don't really remember that much of the year because I've erased it from my memory. But like the 2020 season was just so weird. Like if everything was normal, do you think they're still like what do you think they finished in 2020? Do you think they still finished 6-4?
They would have been. Excuse me, by the way, if I'm getting over a cold, so I'm coughing every now and then. But it would have been a better season because UCF led the nation in opt-outs in 2020. I feel like we lost that context a bit over time.
Mm-hmm.
There was also just stuff going on. UCF had the whole trying to make the players union for the AAC and
Oh
all that right
yeah,
before the season. It just and we've talked about at length about the power of the bounce house, and we kind of saw that this year with Oklahoma State, and that there being no crowd was just killed them that year. More, I mean, teams that rely on their home atmospheres were definitely affected more than ones that weren't. So I don't think that was ever a great team because the defense
yeah,
didn't really exist that year, but they definitely would have been better than 6-4.
yeah. The further we get away from it too is just so bizarre. The whole setup with head coach Josh Heupel and then defensive head coach Randy Shannon.
Yeah, Danny White did a lot of good stuff, but that whole if you don't know what we're talking about, like Josh Heupel wasn't really Randy Shannon's boss. Randy Shannon was hired at the same time as Josh Heupel. They were both hired by Danny White, and it was kind of a not a true co-head coach setup, but sort of like that. And that led to a very divided locker room, which in hindsight, big mistake. But what can you
Yeah,
do?
not ideal. Let's move on. We're gonna go to hope I'm pronouncing this right. Zion or Zion. I'm not sure, but thank you for the three questions.
A,
So
B,
it's
and
the A,
C,
B, and
well
C.
labeled.
Not a one, two, and three, an A, B, and C. A is can you give us some of the backstory to the rumor of Frost being interested in the offensive coordinator position? Do you want to take the lead here? Because
Yeah.
I just remember again, this is the whole you telling me like, you're my newsletter, so it's better to come from you than my version of what you told me.
Yeah, the backstory is that Frost was interested in the OC position. I everyone heard different stuff when that was going on. There was stuff out there that he actually interviewed for the job. There was stuff out there that he'd reached out. But I genuinely don't know how far those conversations went, but that was true. There was at least some sort of mutual conversation there. I think it would have probably gone very badly. And I think we talked about this on the podcast at the time because think of the season that UCF just had, but now think of that season where Scott Frost is the offensive coordinator. And it just feels like a total nightmare because every game they win, I feel like the thing would be, wow, they won because of Frost. Gus needs to step aside and let him be the head coach. And every game they lost, it would be like, wow, Gus needs to get out of here. This was his fault unless Frost be the head coach. So I just think if you're Gus, you would have been a little crazy to do that hire. I also just don't think they gel. Like I just think if you're returning to a school where you were the head coach as a coordinator, I don't know if that works. I just don't know if that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We're not we'll come back to B and C because this is like the perfect opportunity to answer this question from TDH24 at Turn Down Hutch. Would you like to see a Frost rehire in a post Malzahn era of UCF football? I wrote down in my notes yes, but also probably not.
I feel like that sums it up, right?
Because I'd love to see it just because I think it would be like I'm a big vibes guy. Like the vibe would be like, oh wow, like this is crazy. Like he's back and let's see if we can but I don't know. I just don't know if it would go nearly as well as like I think everybody's idea of how it would go is just, oh, it would be like 2017 again. But like a lot has changed. Things didn't go well for him in Nebraska. Not that it's the same job, but it's just like college football's changed since then. I just don't know if him coming back would be what everyone thinks it would be.
I
But I'd
don't
still
think,
also
yeah.
kind of like to see it, but not really.
I've changed on this because for a long time, I think I've even said on the podcast, I'm like, sure. And listen, if it's a situation where, say that Gus retires in 3 years and in these next 3 years, Scott Frost gets a job somewhere, like maybe as a coordinator or a G5 head coach and does a good job and you can justify it. But UCF could in no way justify that hire right now. Not all he's done in his coaching career is fail. That 2017 dream season is the only good season he's had as a head coach. And I think part of the issue is that was Scott Frost a great coach at UCF? And I brought this up before, or did Scott Frost have Mackenzie Milton? Because we saw Josh Heupel come in and basically have the exact same level of success because he had Mackenzie Milton. And Frost brought him in and gets credit for that. And Frost was a really strong recruiter, but culturally, Nebraska was a mess. The locker room was not in a good state. And I think a lot of the UCF situation was that O'Leary was one of those last really sort of hard-ass military style coaches in college football. And that was part of what led to him losing the locker room in those final seasons and everything that happened with that. And Frost is a very much, I'm your buddy. I'm just like you. Let's be friends type head coach. And I think that hire was perfect for that moment. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if, but then that same hire at Nebraska didn't work. And so I just don't know if, I think it was more solid timing in Mackenzie Milton than him genuinely being an awesome coach. I also think that college football is very different today than it was in 2017. And Frost would be stepping into a very different job. And, he recruited well at Nebraska and they still didn't win games. It's not like they weren't recruiting. So I
Yeah.
just, the only thing you'd be hiring him on is 2017 was awesome. And that's just not enough for me.
Yeah. And I wonder what he's gonna do.
I'm amazed he hasn't. Maybe he's just done. I mean, we're 2 years since he's been fired. More than 2 years? He
I mean,
got
like a year and a
fired.
half, right?
No,
He
yeah, a
got
year
it.
and a half. It was at the beginning of
Yeah.
last season.
Yeah.
Is that right?
2022
Or was he
season.
fired in 2022?
The
No, he was fired
2022
last
season.
year. Is
The
that right?
2022 season, right? Yeah. So it's still been a year and a couple months or a
But
few
the
months,
fact
year
that
and a
he's
half.
going to be sitting out because he's going to obviously he doesn't have a job for 2024. I never would have guessed that he would sit out 2 full seasons. So now it's at the point where is he
Yeah.
trying to get back in or is he just moved on? He's made quite a lot of money in his life. He can probably just do something else. I mean, I don't
It's
know.
strange because like the obviously 2 years now, like 2 years or 2 seasons, he'll be unless he gets I don't know on as an analyst somewhere, which I feel like you can still hire them like later in the cycle. But unless that happens, that's 2 seasons, and like the more seasons you start to just add on where he's been out of coaching, like the harder I think it's going to be back
Yeah.
to get back in. Unless it again, I mean, it's going to have to obviously be as a coordinator, and then
I don't even
then on,
necessarily think a coordinator's on the table. I think you would probably need to go
yeah.
the analyst route or a positions coach.
I liked the buzz about him being Iowa's coordinator. That would have been
That was
fun.
funny. But the other thing is, the
Um,
longer he sits out, college football is changing so much right now. It's in this sort of stage of evolution. Is if he sits out a couple more years, it's like he's not even returning to the same sport. I
It's
don't
so
know.
weird too because he's still like pretty young, but
Yeah,
like the way I feel about him coming back to coach after a few years out of it is like how I felt when John Gruden came back in the NFL, like after years of not being a head coach, he was just on ESPN for years. And then like it was like, wow, this like older coach from an older era is coming back. Like saying that about Frost is weird because he's still like he's in his 40s, right? But I don't know if he
he's
still is. I
49.
don't
He's
I never
49.
could okay. I never had like a accurate like gauge of how old he was. I knew it was a weird thing. But yeah, just like he's still relatively young for a head coach, but it's like him coming back into it. It's like, oh, it's one of these like older head coaches coming back. But
When he
I don't
was
know.
at UCF for that 2017 season, there was no transfer portal. There was no NIL. There was a Power Five and not a Power Four. There was no realignment even on the horizon. The clock rules were different. I mean, it's just like the sport is just
Yeah,
it's a completely different sport now. So I just because he was able to be successful in one era under one situation doesn't mean he would be in another. So
yeah.
yeah, it's too
Um,
bad. Sorry, Scott.
it's weird. I hope if he wants to get back into it, I'm rooting for him, but I don't
Me
know.
too.
It just doesn't seem like it's happening. I don't know. We'll go back to B and C now from the previous questions. B was what kind of season would it take for UCF to part ways with Coach Gus? Um, I don't think they can.
Yeah, they go 0-12
Not
and he's
this
not.
year.
Maybe if they literally went 0-12, maybe they would somehow find a way. But let me tell you right now,
They
there is absolutely no way they can afford to fire him. He would have to just basically be told to retire and somehow agree to
that's
that and
just,
leave money on the
that's
table.
what I was gonna say is I feel like I have a hard time at this point seeing them firing him. I feel like it's much more likely that they come to an agreement where it's like, all right, we will mutually part ways. Like if you don't decide to leave slash retire, we're gonna fire you. So like just go ahead and decide to leave slash retire.
Yeah, but Gus
Because it's just
Malzahn could
weird.
always
Like,
the poll, you owe me money. I'm staying until
yeah.
you pay me. I mean, they genuinely physically could not fire him. So it almost doesn't matter, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing from the perspective of who was Terry Mohajir fighting with for him when they gave him this contract extension? Was there there weren't any other schools offering him?
Ghosts.
It's why were you just negotiating against yourself? I don't
Yeah.
understand, but from that perspective, it's bad. From on the other side, it's also I don't know if coaching under pressure is always a good thing. I think you see coaches sort of take shortcuts and do things they shouldn't. I know it's different because it's the NFL, but I was reading some article recently about the NFL about how coaches are not developing quarterbacks from the draft anymore because the leashes are so short for NFL coaches now. They'd rather just go get someone who can be a little better in the interim. So there's downsides, but I don't know. There's no reality where he gets fired.
Is it after this season where the buyout goes down a little bit? Like maybe after next season he could get
I don't
fired,
want to
but
say off the top of my head. I think so. I'm
okay.
not 100% sure.
I mean, I think it does. I don't remember. I don't know if it goes down to where it's manageable, but it does go down, I'm pretty sure. And then C was this very recent like news and a recent question. If slash when FSU leaves the ACC, how does college football look like after all of the other dominoes fall? Your
First off,
guess is as good as mine.
shout out to Gian for 3 very diverse questions.
Yeah.
We're covering the bases.
Yeah.
I can just talk for a little bit on this one if
That's
you want.
fine. Yeah.
I was just texting you about this before we got this question. I was giving you the latest. So the latest update with the whole Florida State thing. If you don't know what's going on, is Florida State and the ACC for a couple months now have been suing each other, and they're still in they're still in the stage where they're arguing over like where the case is going to be heard, whether it will be heard in Tallahassee, where Florida State is based, or in North Carolina, where the ACC is based. Kind of dumb that that's where we're at, but. And the deal there is that Florida State and all the other ACC schools signed a grant of rights that runs through, I believe, 2036. And the grant of rights cedes their TV rights to the conference. The conference holds their TV rights. And why FSU is so pissed is because we've seen things like Texas and Oklahoma leave the SEC, right? Or all these Pac-12 teams leave the Pac-12. They can do that because they pay an exit fee and they leave. The ACC does not have an exit fee. They have that grant of rights. It's we own your television rights and there's nothing you can do about it until 2036. So Florida State is suing to try to break the grant of rights. The understanding is there really is no way to break it because it's apparently what's interesting is the document's power is how simple it is. It's a very straightforward. There aren't a lot of loopholes. It's just, yeah, we own them. Sucks for you. And the latest update, which came out last Friday, is that the ACC has sort of given an olive branch to Florida State of saying that, hey, if you wanted to maybe buy back your TV rights on a price we agree upon, which experts believe could be probably in the $350 million range, then they could make a deal there. So which Florida State will find that money. So if that happens, then I just don't know because Florida State, excuse me, again, I'm trying not to cough. Florida State would obviously leave the ACC at that point, but the ACC, it's not like the gates are open. Any other teams that also wanted to leave would have to probably pay a similar price tag. So you might see like North Carolina and Virginia leave because it's the worst kept secret in college football that both the Big Ten and SEC deeply covet those two programs because it expands them to new and growing television markets. But what hurts the Big 12 in that reality is that the ACC doesn't just crumble at that point because like Brett Yormark in the Big 12 might say, hey, we now that the door's open, we might like to go get Duke or Louisville or maybe Miami. Those schools don't have the money to pay that, especially if they're not, especially they can probably only justify it in the first place if they're getting an invite to one of the two richest conferences. So the ACC would kind of weirdly hold together anyway, I feel like, unless the only way that it totally collapses is if the ACC loses their case and the grant of rights is dissolved, which I don't see happening. And also now I'm just rambling, I know, but it's also something that a lot of the other conferences are rooting against because they all have grant of rights too. And if a court rules that one's not good, it means all of them probably aren't good. So even the Big Ten SEC are like, hey, maybe Florida State can just stop here and not get this document voided. So it's interesting, but I don't think it would be a full like Pac-12 style dissolution is kind of where I'm leaning.
Yeah. That was a good rundown. I've never felt more like AJ Hawk on the Pat McAfee show, how he just kind of sits there just because I had nothing to add there. But no, that was a really good rundown of it. But I guess I'm glad that it wouldn't be like a giant, blow up of everything because I'm kind of sick of those at this point. And I don't know. I don't know if I want to see another one right now. So
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Say that I'm trying so hard not to cough, guys. I apologize. Say that Florida State leaves, and then I don't know, North Carolina and Virginia leave as well, and no one else is going to pay that fee. They don't have a home to go to. What happens when the ACC is like, hey, UCF, West Virginia, Cincy, what are you guys doing? What's UCF doing in that situation?
I don't think it's not stable enough at that point, I don't think,
Probably not,
but
right? You're also aligning yourself with
yeah,
some really like you'd win more games, but you'd be in a way worse conference. I mean, you're aligning yourself with
you're
Boston College and Syracuse and Cal and Stanford and SMU. I don't think you want to do that.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing is you're aligning yourself with like if things were all to blow up again, you're aligning yourselves with the brands who would get left out. And like why voluntarily just be like, yeah, we can win more games and regionally it would make more sense, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like I wouldn't want it.
UCF would win a lot more games, but also like once those teams are gone, is that still considered a power conference? I don't know. It's just
Yeah, no,
we're gonna have to do all this
UCF's
again
in
in
a
a few
stable
years.
spot right now, hilariously enough. For now, at least for now, until things change again. But who knows? So we want to do the existential crisis question now, or want to say that for the end?
Oh, my thing. Let's end with
Yeah,
that.
okay,
Let's end
we'll
with
end with
that.
that. All right, let's go to Clay Pasco, he says two things. Will USF ever get invited to a Power Four conference, and will we ever reschedule them within the next 5 years? So that's part of the question. That's two things within the first part. Um, I don't know. This is again another one of those things where it's like I wouldn't have predicted some of the things that have happened like last year or like 2 years ago. So I don't want to say no, but until things change again drastically, like I think they are maybe making themselves more attractive if there is going to be another wave of it. Like if they can actually get this stuff across the line where they can get a stadium and they can actually build in the right direction. But as of right now, I still don't know if they've done enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because I fighting for my life, guys. If it would
I've been
only be
there.
the ACC, right? Like they're never coming to the Big 12. That's just not happening because the Big 12 has no need for them. It would never make sense. So the question is, if the ACC lost some teams, the teams we were just talking about, who would they backfill with? I think Memphis is an obvious choice at that
Yeah.
point. I don't know how close USF is to be.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. And as far as are we going to schedule? Are we going to see them on the schedule again in the next 5 years? Well, I don't know if this means like the next 5 years of schedules because no, I don't believe they have an opening until like the 2030s. Um, but also like I don't know if they're going to work on getting back on the schedule within the next 5 years for in the 2030s. It doesn't. If I had to
Yeah,
guess right
I
now,
don't
it
know.
doesn't feel like it. It
I
doesn't
don't
feel
think
like.
there's any momentum on either side, to be honest with you.
And I don't know. I still think it would be fun. I still think even if they don't want to do it in football, from UCF standpoint, it makes sense to do it in all the other sports for travel reasons and
It bothers me
just
we're not seeing that in other sports. Like, there's no reason that men's basketball should, not that I necessarily wanted to see that this year, but not that there's no reason for it to not be happening in those other sports. And I think it's dumb. I also want to point out that that's a next level of petty because Texas and Texas A&M don't like each other. And it's not like, oh, where rivals don't like each other. Genuinely, as organizations and like universities hate each other. They,
yeah.
when they split up conferences, still played in the other sports. So it's extra weird that UCF and USF aren't doing that. And I know a lot of UCF fans are like, yeah, leave them in the dirt and all that. But I like beating them. I know that occasionally UCF would
They're
lose to them, but there's no team I enjoy beating more than USF, and I miss that.
they have done it in some sports. So I was talking actually about this exact question before we even knew it was a question we had for the podcast. But Eric Lopez and I were talking about this at the softball game last. So it was Friday. I don't remember how it came up. We were just talking about it, and baseball is hosting USF this year for a
Yeah,
weekend
they're the one
series,
sport.
the beginning of March. I believe, and he brought this up. I believe women's soccer hosted USF last year.
Oh, really?
I
I
don't.
thought
I
was that
don't
an exhibition
remember.
or was that a?
I don't. That could be a good point. I don't remember honestly. Um, I don't really remember, but yeah, it was weird to me to not see it in either basketball program. I don't know if softball had and this was the point that he brought up to me was softball because the Big 12 has so many conference games. There's just less room on the schedule for it.
Yeah, that's true.
They play more conference games in the Big 12, so I don't know. I think football wise, it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon. Like it doesn't even seem like something that is an interest for. I don't even say anyone. Like I don't know. It's you don't hear anything about it. And anytime the question's been asked, I think on either side, it's just been kind of been like, oh, like we'll see. I don't know. Um, but I don't know. And then the other part of Clay's question, in your guys' time at UCF, did you ever have weird run-ins with the players? He says he met Jordan Davis at Night Library and used the bathroom next to Javon.
That's wow.
Appreciate the insight there. You want to answer first?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any like that interesting ones. I think that is it football or is it anything?
It can be anything, I think.
Okay. I will say we did have a friend, our friend Sarah, who you told me not to say this on the podcast, but I'm gonna say it anyway, who was our photographer when we were at UCF for Night Sports Now, and she got like a DM from a player, which was something, but I my weirdest one honestly was that I went to UCF, I lived in Tower 3, if you know where that is. And why are you
Yeah.
laughing?
Just because everybody knows who the player is,
He DM'd a lot. He
probably.
DM'd a lot. He DM'd if you were a woman who went to UCF in 2018, you got a DM from this player. But so I lived in Tower 3 when I was at UCF, which athletes live in the tower dorms. And when I started covering UCF stuff initially, I got on with it was at the Central Florida Future, which was the school newspaper, which closed pretty quickly after that because that's my kind of luck. I was covering a softball team, first stuff I ever covered. Then the next fall, I got on with an organization that also no longer exists called the Central Florida Focus, and I was covering the women's basketball team. And if you lived in towers, you know that each tower is like a U, like it's like there's a middle part, then a section and a section. So I was off in one section on the third floor, and it was I don't know why it was this way, but it was like my room with my roommates, and then we were surrounded by the women's basketball team. And I don't know why that was the case. So it was just this really awkward thing after every single game because I would be filing my story and like then like heading back. I'm just like kind of like trailing the women's basketball team, trying to make it act like the person that's covering their game isn't following them back to their freaking dorms, like going out of my way, like, look, I have a key card.
This
And there
would
were
be
lots
your
of like
luck.
very awkward, like sort of like half waves in the hallway, like, yeah, I'm that guy who asked you about your poor shooting performance last night. How's it going? Like and it was just constant because I covered them the whole
Yeah.
season.
Yeah. I have a couple that you actually brought this one up that I had honestly forgot about it, which is funny because it meant a lot to me at the time. We were walking after media day one year. I think it was 2018. We were walking after media day, and Wyatt Miller walked by, and he called me boss. I have no idea why. He was like, "What's up, boss?" And I was like, "Hey." I don't like. He didn't have to acknowledge me. I thought that was very kind of him. The other thing is,
That one wasn't even an interesting thing. It was just that it happened and you in the moment, because I'm walking with you, were like, that was great, man. And then for the next 2 years, you were just like, remember the time he called us boss or called me boss?
yeah,
Like that was just so great.
good time. Shout out Wyatt Miller. The other one isn't really a player interaction. It was just a weird thing that happened. Like I think it was 2017. My friend slash roommate Matt and I we went to Wingstop, and we went to go sit down at a table, and there was a credit card that had been left on the table, and I was like picked it up. I was like, oh, let me go like return this, and then I realized the credit card belonged to Mackenzie Milton's mom. So we were like, oh, like where like we can just I guess return this. Like we know rather than give it like to the people at Wingstop, like we can return this to UCF. Like somehow we'll get it back to Mackenzie, he'll get it to his mom or whatever. So Matt ended up taking care of the whole thing because I don't know if I had class or what, but he went to I think it must have been the Wayne Dench Center or wherever he went and kind of was just like, hey, or he might have even DM'd Mackenzie and Mackenzie we were like, hey, we found your mom's credit card. And so they kind of arranged to get it back to him, and I guess he took it back into the facility, and we returned Milton's mom's credit card without we didn't buy anything. So I guess it was a good thing that we found it rather than someone who would have used it for worse purposes. So I don't
I'm
know.
trying to find the text messages on this because I know they exist and I can't find them. All I can find is at one point I said, "Did you ever figure out the whole credit card thing?" And you just replied, "No, LOL, we still have it."
Oh, see, I don't really remember. I don't remember how long it took. I just feel like I don't know if he DM'd him on Instagram or what happened, but I think Mackenzie finally replied and was like, "Yeah, go ahead and bring it to the football
I
center."
remember it took a while for some reason to get
Oh,
it back because I just
I don't
remember
even remember
for the
that.
longest like not like days or anything, but just like there was a stretch of time where I was just like, ah, Bailey has Mackenzie Milton's mom's credit card. What a strange thing, but yeah.
Yeah, and then because Matt handled the whole thing, I think he still I don't know if he still has it or what's the whole deal is, but he had
Still has
Mackenzie's
the credit card.
his phone number. Um, so yeah, that was the one story. I mean, I'm sure there were probably more, but those were the two that popped into my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
I know I'm sure some of you are hoping for something really crazy and that there's just nothing. I brutally made fun of a Lime bike one time and was like standing 2 feet from it with you telling you how stupid it is that they're USF colors. Then Titus Davis like brushed past me to get on the Lime bike and ride away while I'm mid sentence of how much I hate them. So
I
that
don't
was
even
cool,
remember. Like,
but
I don't recall that at all.
I remembered it because I was mortified. Like, it wasn't a thing where it was like, oh, we're off in the distance. Like, I'm standing 2 feet from the line bike, chastising it. And he's like, excuse me, and like, get on the line bike and right away. And I'm like, great, crush that.
Good job, Christian. Um, cool. All right, we'll go on to
Those
another
line bikes were
question.
so stupid. Can I just, if you went to UCF during the line, I'm assuming they're gone now, right? There's no way those are still on campus.
I don't know. I
They
can't
also ended
remember.
up
They have the
everywhere.
scooters now, right?
There was a line bike in the freaking pond outside the student union. There was a traffic issue one day because someone parked a line bike in front of the exit to a parking garage, so none of the cars could get out without running it over. There was a line bike on top of it. They were everywhere. It was nonsense.
It became a thing. Like I think people were like putting them, they were parking them in like weird places, like
People would park them
for
outside a
fun.
classroom. I'd leave class and someone just has a line bike parked. Man, what a time.
All right, we'll go to a question from Mike at McGuckin_M6. It says, "Who's the biggest loss for UCF in the transfer portal era? A player at UCF that went on to have or be great at another school."
Mikey Keene.
There's a
No,
case.
it's not my. There's not. I mean, it's
I
Dylan
honestly think
Gabriel,
it's
right?
yeah, it's Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, it has to be.
It is. I think like I realized this last night as I was looking at this. Dylan Gabriel was on pace for the most passing touchdowns he'd ever thrown for slash would ever throw for. I mean, we'll see what he does this season, but like the pace that he was on in 2021 under Gus. I know like everyone's talking about how he wasn't a fit for Gus's system, which I guess he wasn't. But now he runs all the time now, so who
Yep.
even cares? Um, but he had thrown 9 touchdowns in I think 3 games, and if you extrapolate all that out, it would have been I guess what 36 touchdowns. And that would have been his career high still to this day. So yeah, I would say it was Dylan. The only other case I would, it's not even necessarily a situation where they went on
There
to be
was
so
one
great.
other name I listed, so I'm really curious if you're going to say the same name, but go ahead.
It's like they didn't go on to like be so great at other schools, but I just packaged kind of Tatum Bethune and Jeremiah Jean Baptiste together just because
Yeah.
of what it resulted in for UCF's linebacker room. Like it wasn't even necessarily a thing where it's like, I mean, they were both good players and they both like had their best years, I think, at UCF. But it was just the fact that they left UCF's linebacker room completely bare, and
Yeah.
that's why they were such big losses.
So the
Is that who
reason
you're
you
thinking
can,
of?
the reason, yeah, it was Tatum Bethune. The reason you can
Mm-hmm.
make a case for Tatum Bethune over Dylan Gabriel is that because I was sort of thinking about with Dylan, say if he hadn't transferred, right, 2022 is obviously a significantly better season if he's at quarterback versus JRP and then Mikey. I think we're all in firm agreement on that. And they probably go
Mm-hmm.
to the Cotton Bowl. They maybe even win the Cotton Bowl, totally different year. But to me, it kind of stops there because the only reason Dylan Gabriel's still in college is because school, like he can make more money in college than he can going to the NFL. And that wouldn't have been the case if he'd stayed at UCF. So he would have either just transferred later or gone to the NFL. So it's like, I think you can only buy like one more season with him. Tatum Bethune, like if he hadn't transferred, could have still been playing for UCF this year and probably would have. And I just think of, I know that one line, it's not the same difference as a star quarterback, but I just think of how different is this season if Tatum Bethune's out there. I think it's actually notably different.
See, I did have that thought too because I was like the drop off from Gabriel to Mikey slash JRP slash Mikey again slash JRP again wasn't as big as the drop off from Tatum Bethune to the linebackers left.
Yeah.
So it's like you could make that case where it's as far as how it affected UCF, like they got by with not as good quarterback play, but decent to solid quarterback play versus things went catastrophic when they lost their linebackers.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Outside of those two, I can't even really think of like
There are guys that you would have wished would have stayed. I think you wish Ryan O'Keefe would have stayed. I think you wish
yeah.
that Jalen Robinson would have stayed, but there's no one
I'll
else
say
where it's like, yeah, I just man, it keeps me up at night that they left. And which
every
is funny because I know a
skill,
lot of schools have a lot of those guys, and UCF really
yeah.
doesn't.
And I feel like every skill player that has left UCF has like for what should have probably been better situations has done worse or has like because like Jalen Robinson I think bounced to like 2 more schools
Yeah,
after
he
UCF.
went to Ole Miss and didn't play, then he went to TCU. Jeremiah and Jean Baptiste, not just talking about skill players, he went to Ole Miss and I don't think he ever really played there.
Yeah,
Cam Good won a national championship, so I think you probably have to say that one worked out. But
he was
I don't
really
know.
good.
He was really good, but again, that's not a position where I'm like, oh man, like
Yeah,
if
no,
only they had Cam Good this year. It's actually kind of crazy that UCF hasn't had more, and that's presumably going to continue this year because they didn't lose anyone major in the portal this year. They lost Josh Elliscar, who still hasn't found a home, by the way,
that's
and
yeah, that seems weird to me.
I don't understand what's going on there because he's not a dramatic loss for UCF, but he's still a really good player, and Corey Thornton, who okay.
Yeah. Oh, the other one, this wasn't even really not like the biggest loss because I think they've been fine without him, but Matt Lee was like a player that like I wish
Yeah,
would have left.
man. I
But then
actually,
again,
yeah,
the I think he's been doing well at Miami based on all the PFF stuff I've seen. But all I can ever think about now with Matt Lee is that picture of him crying
of
from
him
the sideline,
crying,
which is
of
really
him crying.
unfortunate.
It is
Um,
unfortunate.
just an unfortunate visual.
Is
But
Matt Lee the most hated transfer? Feels like he
why
is.
is it? Because he went to Miami?
I
I
think
think
it's a
Dylan
couple
Gabriel's probably
things.
more
I think
hated.
it's that he was a UCF legacy, and I think it's he went to Miami.
Hmm.
I think it's those two things because UCF fans really enjoy watching him fail. And
Which is weird to me because I think that was just he left because Miami, like if they threw a bag at you, you'd leave too as a fan.
and that's kind of the point I always want to make to fans whenever you're really mad at a player for leaving. And we've all been there. It's actually funny, like how much college football has changed. I don't know if I ever said this on the podcast. It was a few months ago at this point. I for some reason because someone made a comment about it, I listened back to our Dylan Gabriel leaving episode, our reaction to him leaving, and it just did not age well. We were just saying dumb stuff on it, like really antiquated stuff about like NIL, and it's just stuff changes. But the thing I always just want to say to fans when you're mad at a player for transferring is this player doesn't have. Well, it's actually funny because Matt Lee kind of did, but this player doesn't have the relationship to UCF that you have. They're not living and dying by the result of this program. They're not willing to put their own future and their own career on the line for this school. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is that UCF's not willing to do that for its players either. Gus Malzahn has brought in recruits who it's the whole pitch to their parents and them of, oh my God, we're going to turn you into these great young men. You're going to have an amazing 4 years here. We love you. We're going to feature you this way. You're perfect for our offense or defense. Then you come in, you suck, and at the end of the season, it's a handshake and please get out because we need your scholarship for someone else. So there's no loyalty on either side. So I don't know how you can demand it of players when we have no issue with the staff getting rid of players who aren't performing to bring in better options.
Right. No, that's fair. Going on to the next one, which is one that I've probably been dreading the most, I think. It's from Cameron Cox and it says start bench cut. Milton Bortles Culpepper.
You know what sucks is I had a really easy time with this.
Did you?
I actually did.
I
I
still
didn't
don't
think
know
about
what
it
I
that
was
much.
gonna do. I was thinking actually just like flipping a coin live on the podcast, but I don't know. What was your answer then? My joke answer slash real answer was to start all three of them and bench Cameron for asking the question. You're
Oh
on the
man,
bench now, but I don't know.
forcing
You
us to
go
ask
ahead.
to say mean things. I went start Culpepper, bench Milton, cut Bortles.
That's actually what I wrote down.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it feels icky to do it because they're all incredible players, but Dante Culpepper, it's a little bit of I'm just accepting what people before me have said because there's very little footage out there of him. You can't even really find box scores for a lot of his games, but everyone I've ever met who watched him play for UCF has talked about how freaking transcendent he was and how
Yeah.
he was like a tank that moved like a Lamborghini and just I
And that would
can't.
still play today. Like that would still
Yeah.
be like
Yes.
if we're doing this in today's age, like even now, it was not like one of those where it's like, oh yeah, it was a different era back then. Like
No.
he was only good in that era. Like no, he would still dominate in this era too.
Can you
So
imagine Gus with Dante Culpepper?
oh, I have imagined it. Like I feel like we've had this conversation before, maybe because
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's actually what I wrote down. So it's funny that we both. I wouldn't say I had an easy time with it, but that was like my initial instinct where it was like, yeah, and it's harsh. I feel like cutting Blake Bortles just
Yeah. Because he was
because he's
incredible.
Blake Bortles and he was incredible, and I don't know. It's just that's where I went. I don't
I
have any
also
really more
have
analysis
realized
on it.
that, and I hate it because now we're just feeding it. I think the younger UCF fans, and I'm generalizing a little bit here, like the post 2017 fans and some who came on right around then, don't think much of Bortles because they only really know him as the
The
NFL player
NFL,
Blake
yeah.
Bortles, where he wasn't successful. But guys at UCF, he was incredible. I mean, he and Milton, it's not a super discernible difference between them. I mean, they were both. I think Milton had definitely passed him by the end
Hmm.
of his career, but Blake Bortles was really freaking good.
I always wonder, and it wouldn't have ever made sense for him to do this because he was what the number 3 pick from Jacksonville in
Yeah,
2014.
2014 draft.
But if he would have come back for 2014,
They won the conference title without him anyway. I mean,
yeah,
that would have been a really good team. They probably would have been in a New Year's Six Bowl if he'd come back. But again, and it was one of
yeah,
those things where it was going into the Fiesta Bowl, if I remember right, it was kind of up in the air if he was going to leave or
yeah.
not. Like you figured he was, but it was you never know. Then the Fiesta Bowl happened. It was like, oh, he's out of here.
I wish I could go back and remember because I would say like I didn't follow the draft as closely now as I or as I do now.
Yeah.
But going like I don't remember what his ascension was like. Was it like always going to be the fact that he was going to be like that high of a pick?
No, it
I
was
don't
even a surprise on draft
on
night that
draft
he was
night.
that high
Okay,
of a
because I
pick.
couldn't remember
He was going to
really.
go high. The whole forgive me, but there were a group of quarterbacks, and I remember the talk going into the draft was one of these guys is going to fall because I don't know if it was just the order of the teams and who needed quarterbacks or whatever, and it
Mhm.
was like the whole antsiness of who's it going to be. It ended up being Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It was. I actually kind of want to look this up now because I remember I was at the Bucks draft party and the Bucks picked seventh, and they picked Mike Evans, which has worked out like
Pretty well.
incredibly well.
Pretty well.
People at the time were upset because they wanted the Bucks to take Johnny Manziel at seventh overall,
Oh boy. That age
and I
grade.
remember some reactions in there. But yeah, no, it was just looking back at the 2014 draft class, kind of funny because the I don't know the quarterbacks like it wasn't like the like Jacksonville went wrong with it because
They've
really
still
like
had their best season in what, like 20 years with him at
yeah, they
quarterback?
went to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Like he was the first quarterback taken, and then the next quarterback taken was Manziel at 22.
That's
And
crazy. So
I
that's what
don't
it
know who
was.
else.
There were, because
Teddy
like I said, I
Bridgewater
just
was
remember
probably, I
that.
mean, the best.
Yeah.
He went 32nd overall, but oh,
I
then Derek Carr went in the second round. So
You
yeah,
know
I
how
guess
rare it
basically,
is for I don't think the fact that UCF just in their history has had two different quarterbacks drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. I don't know if the average fan understands how rare that is.
yeah, and just even like you can say whatever you want about his NFL career. Bortles is still a top five draft pick. Like
Yeah.
that's that's something to hang your hat on. Like that's
Oh, it's
crazy.
pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Um,
I wouldn't even really, maybe I'm being a biased UCF fan. I don't even know if I'd go as far to call him a bust. I don't know if you can call a guy who starts for 5 years for a team as a bust. He just didn't live up to the expectations of his pick. Maybe that's what a bust
yeah.
is. Maybe I said he's not a bust and I described the definition of a bust. I don't know.
Fair enough. All right, so we got that one already. We will do
We're working
this
through
one.
these.
Yeah, Ashwin asked, "What would our 2023 football record be if JRP wasn't injured? How much was the season a reflection of Timmy versus bad rush defense?"
My
I
hot take is I don't even know if the record's different.
I said 7-5.
You think it's one game better? I can see that.
I think they win the Baylor game. I'm not even like going to say like the whole collapse against Baylor was on Timmy because it wasn't,
Just because
but
there's no way that happens twice.
just I guess
Like,
that's part of it. It just feels like I don't know. And I know it's one of those weird things where it's like JRP wouldn't have let that happen. Like it's nothing he could do about it. It's like it was just a bizarre thing that happened. For some reason, I feel like they hold on to that lead
I kind of,
with him in the game. I don't
but
know
even
why.
then, the moment they lost the game was an RJ Harvey direct snap, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So I
I
don't
think
even
so.
know.
So I don't really it's a weird and
Look,
again, it's like
JRP
it doesn't happen
missed
twice.
JRP missed Kansas State, or he missed Villanova, excuse me. Then he missed at Kansas State. Then he missed Baylor. We're gonna say he missed at Kansas, and
Yeah.
then he was back. So and then he wasn't healthy for. He didn't seem truly healthy until maybe like I don't know, like Oklahoma State or Texas Tech was the first time he was moving the way he had.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but I don't think like the reason that they were not as successful this season as some of the fan base thought they should be is that they just genuinely didn't have the roster for it. They didn't have Power Five depth yet. The run defense was horrible. The linebacker room was bare. I don't ever think it was a quarterback issue at any point. I think JRP did a
Yeah.
really good job improving to keep it from being a quarterback issue. But I also think that while Timmy was chaotic at times, I don't think those games were games that they lost because Timmy was bad. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't
He did some
what?
dumb stuff against Kansas State that wouldn't happen with JRP, but I was thinking Kansas State was just a lot better than UCF.
No,
So
I think so. And that's what I was going to say. He didn't necessarily help, but I'm not going to pin enough of that loss on him to say it's a different result. And it's absolutely not the case. The Kansas just killed UCF.
yeah, you
So
can't come
that's
out and say
like
that. I mean,
no.
and Kansas killed UCF by just going straight at the linebackers over and over again. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing about who the quarterback is, unless you're
That's
saying
why
JRP was going to somehow it was going to turn into a shootout where UCF wins like 63-56 or something, which I don't buy.
yeah. But that's why I still think it's like maybe 7-5.
Yeah,
Maybe
okay,
Baylor doesn't happen again because that was just insane.
I can get behind that.
Can't believe it. Um, still hurts. We'll get this one from Mike MD Knight 2016 says, which would you rather see get done first? And I actually haven't even really, I don't know if I have the answer to this yet. Roof slash awning over FBC Mortgage Stadium or Lazy River plus roof slash awning at John Juliano Park plus a new softball stadium. By new softball stadium, I just imagine he means renovations, not like a new stadium.
They could. It's barely a stadium. Like they could use.
I guess so,
You could kind
yeah.
of call it. It's bleachers in a box. I mean, you could technically call it a new stadium.
Yeah.
My answer is that I sit in the press box. I don't care about a roof for the bounce house, so
You're
I'll
the
go
worst.
option two.
You're the worst human. I ended up saying the latter, which is surprising because like
Oh,
what you
I'm an
thought it meant like
idiot.
ladder with the
I
two
thought you meant like
D's
an actual ladder.
ladder.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. And the roof awning at the baseball stadium, like they kind of already have like that little breeze. I don't know if you call it a breezeway, but like that area that they've expanded with the club, like under the club now, is
Yeah,
very like comfortable if you want to stand and watch the game. Like I've done that before. It's more so the softball expansion needs to happen.
badly.
So I would say I want to see that first, and then the lazy river and baseball awning. That's a bonus in this case.
My
But
also take for if they'd put like an awning over the bounce houses, I don't know how much that's actually gonna. They already sell at the stadium, so it's not like that's going to increase attendance. It might increase
no,
people
it
not
would just
leaving, but I don't know.
yeah.
I'd way
For me,
rather have a
that
lazy river, you know?
yeah. The only reason I see that being a thing that I would want is because it would just make it a more. I think it would make it a more enjoyable experience, or like a more. I have a little bit more comfort.
I will
I
say I
don't
would
know.
never want a roof. I don't want them playing indoor football. Like this is
No,
Florida,
no,
and
no,
that's an
no, man. I don't
advantage.
think
I
they
want
can.
the
Yeah,
other team to be, sweltering.
I'm thinking like probably what everybody's talking about is how they do it, how they have it in Miami, right?
Right. The
Kind of like
canopy. Yeah.
the canopy, and I think that would be a really good thing, just because I don't know how much shade do those things provide, other
The
than like for the people who sit
for the
under them.
Dolphin Stadium, I've been there. It's shady. Like
Is
the
it?
stands are shaded. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I mean I would love that at some point because it would make some of these afternoon games a lot less brutal.
Hmm. I'd rather
Yeah,
have a lazy
whatever.
river and
No
a new
one.
softball stadium.
Yeah, laser river that you're going to be able to use. That's right.
I don't care. I'm just convinced in my head, and this is so stupid because I firmly, with all my heart, believe the Lazy River is not going to happen. I don't know if we mentioned on this podcast that Terry Mohajir and Mark Daniels did this like state of UCF video a couple weeks ago, and Mark Daniels asked Terry Mohajir about the Lazy River, and he goes, and Terry Mohajir goes, "Oh, you're going to see some movement there. As early as this spring, we're going to actually start moving the football field away,
You're
so
going
we'll
to
have
dump
room
some more
for it."
sand.
And then it dumps some more sand out. And then after saying that they're moving one of the practice fields, I said the football stadium, I'm at the practice field. They're going to move one of the practice fields to make room for the Lazy River. Then after that, he goes, and for the Lazy River itself, we're still in the fundraising stage. We know it's never happening. They're stealing your money. If you are a
Yep.
rich donor and you're listening to this podcast and Terry Mohajir calls you up and says, we want to build the Lazy River, he is fleecing you. They're never building that damn thing. So, but I,
Yeah.
in my head, believe that if they did build it, I think UCF would just start getting 5 stars. I know that's nonsensical, especially in the NIL era when 5 stars are going for like $500,000 a pop. I'm just convinced that
Who
if they
needs
built a
half a
real
million
lazy river, not a
when you've
dumb
got a
lazy
lazy
river,
river?
because I'm also of the belief that if they ever actually do build it, it's going to be the worst lazy river you've ever seen in your life. They will half-ass everything. It's going to be the bounce house of lazy rivers. It's going to be all lame and whatever. So I don't buy anything about it. But if they ever built a real awesome tropical lazy river, like in the pick one of the 15 different renderings they've come up with in the last 6 years, every time they change it, I think UCF would win the national championship in college football. I equate those things in my brain.
Okay. I just want the softball stadium to be expanded. That's why I
That
answered
too.
the way I
That
did.
too.
Um, this is the second to last question. This one's from Zach at Zeebles UCF. How would you describe Timo's tenure as UCF's AD? Because he's making UCF so boring, should we call him T less? That made me laugh. I have to get through that for a second. Who do you want T less to hire after we bamboozle Arkansas into buying our broken Gus bus?
There's a lot going on in this tweet.
Yeah, I
There's a
have tears
lot
in my
going
eyes. I
on.
don't know why T less makes me laugh
Which
so
I also have to
much.
give a shout out to Zeebles, if that's how you say it, for every now and then creating like the most specific memes I've ever seen for some of our episodes, like just shockingly spot on.
Yeah,
How would you describe Terry Modder's tenure?
not good. I
Yeah, I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I've said on the podcast before, like I just for some reason I'm just having a hard time liking him.
That's how I feel too. There's not been anything overtly bad, but I just also kind of wish he wasn't the AD. I've said this before, and it's the best way I can phrase it is for the most part, he's been good at the important stuff, the fundraising stuff, the facility stuff. He was slow to embrace NIL, but now he's all in on it. It's the not important stuff that he's bad at. It's the I don't like Peter uniforms, so I got rid of it. That I'm still mad about that, by the way. It's the I don't
Yeah,
like Peter uniforms, so they're gone. It's the do fans really want to watch baseball on ESPN Plus, or should they just get a shot on iPhone video from the freaking dugout for the game? It's or like
yeah.
when there's a microphone and he just says something that gets misconstrued and becomes a big Twitter thing. That's the stuff he's bad at.
When he
But
promised everyone that the Big 12 schedule would come out on Tuesday or something like that, and they were like,
you remember
it
what
was like
Baylor's
other
AD
ADs,
said?
like Baylor's AD was like UCF's not in the Big 12 yet. It was like,
Yeah,
well,
he
yeah, I mean
said
they
Mac
are,
Rhodes
but
said I would remind him
yeah,
that UCF's not in the Big 12. It's just stuff like that.
yeah.
We are at the point where there have been enough of them now. We can maybe start having the coaching hire conversation soon about how we think he's been doing. It's Gus Malzahn, it's Jenny Maurer. I can never say her last name, and I apologize.
Maurer,
Maurer. I have a hard time saying that.
yeah.
I also say Gus Malzahn's name wrong too,
I
and
have a
just
hard
accepted
time
that.
saying Giuliano. Is that what it is? John Giuliano?
Juliano.
Giuliano.
Just say
Okay.
you, Juliano.
Giuliano. Okay.
Unless that's wrong, and if it is, I apologize. So what? It's Jenny Marr, Gus Malzahn,
The TMSer.
Satya Messer, and Rich Wallace. So there's
Rich
enough of them
Wallace,
now
yeah.
that we can sort of have a conversation. Because let me tell you, I think the
Rich
first
Wallace, want to know.
none of them are great. Is that fair to say? Like none of them are hitting what the hope was. And actually, none of them have the program where it was before they were hired.
We can't say that about Rich Wallace yet.
Sure, we can. They almost lost. They almost lost to Bryant,
matter.
And then in their next game, we're gonna lose.
This is
my problem. They got saved by the rain.
How do you know they were gonna lose? It was the 5th inning. They were losing the 5th inning the night before.
Bailey, you cannot tell me. Which, by the way, we've talked about this in the podcast before. I just don't really follow. Like, baseball is the sport I absolutely.
This is where I get frustrated with you, because you're like, baseball's bad. And I was like, it's baseball. There's so much variance in baseball that you're gonna lose a dumb game like that. Florida lost to St. John's on Friday night.
But I agree. But let me just say this. What's great about whenever we talk about UCF baseball, and this has been the case for years, is I turn into the type of UCF fan I hate, just uninformed and pissed.
Yes,
but
exactly.
But I agree that it was one game, but then it was two, because the same crap was happening in the second game. So I'm joking around. Like, I'm not honestly worried, but but I will say, I also feel super emboldened, because the only UCF coach I've ever said on this podcast I feel should be fired was Greg Lovelady. Then that's the one that got fired. So now I just feel like I have power and that I'm right about these things.
The thing with me is, like, we can start to talk about his coaching hires. We can start, like, he's been good at fundraising. Yes, they've gotten a lot of gifts. And this might just be being dumb, and I am dumb. What has he done with it?
$12 million to renovate the basketball stadium and the practice facilities for basketball.
Has that happened?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like there's nothing.
New locker rooms for pretty much every sport. They've really gussied up the Wayne Dench facility. They've been using the money. I mean, facilities are a lot better than they were when he came in. That was one area Danny White had neglected. I'm not gonna, like I said, we can talk all day about things Mohajir's done that make me want to pull my hair out and bash my head into this table in front of me. But how he spent the money he's raised,
giving Gus a contract extension when no one was coming for him.
I can't overstate how much the pewter thing bothers me. Like, I know that's a really stupid thing to care this much about, but it's more the principle of it. Of UCF had this uniform, this color that fans really liked, and all fans said, hey, we love these, they're great. Mohajir came in and said, I know you all like them, but I don't, so we're getting rid of them. He said to the Orlando Sentinel and on a UCF space, he said, yeah, I just don't like them.
We're black and gold.
It's not about you. It's not about you. You have a job because of the fans. The fans are who this is all supposed to be for.
What was the thing too is we're the only black and gold team in the Big 12. Not anymore.
How'd that go?
Not anymore, you're not.
How'd that go? Do you remember Matt Murchell at the Orlando Sentinel asked him for a follow-up quote, and his follow-up quote was, I was not aware that they were going to eventually out of Colorado. It was just one sentence, very straight to the point of, oh yeah, I didn't think that would happen.
No, I didn't know it was happening, but I don't know.
Bring back Peter.
Yeah.
I don't care about anthracite. Every now and then I tweet bring back Peter, and some fans like, yeah, and anthracite. I'm like, no, like, we don't need that.
We don't need it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I would say his 10 years, I guess, been average. Like,
it's been fine.
It's been fine. He's just not the most likable.
Today,
I don't know.
Today I realized, well, it's relative to what you're expecting partially. Like, he was considered a home run hire. It was a big, he was a guy that a lot of bigger schools have wanted. It was considered a big deal. UCF got him. And I guess just him not living up to that has hurt. And I got some clarification on how I feel about it today, because Missouri unexpectedly lost their athletic director today. They took the Arizona job. It was considered a big deal. Now Missouri's open. And I, for a second, was like, ooh, maybe they want to call one Terry Mohajir. And I realized that the thought of him taking that job made me happy. So that maybe is what I'm Go get Scott Carr, you know?
Yeah, bring him home.
Yeah.
The other part of the question was, who do we want T-Less to hire after we bamboozle Arkansas into buying our broken Gus bus?
Scott Frost.
The only name I put down was GJ Kinney.
I don't know.
But I don't know. He's a Texas guy, so I don't know.
There's no home run. There's no. Oh, I have one.
Who is it?
And I'm serious about this. Alex Golish. Can you imagine?
Devious.
Can you imagine?
I thought about that.
Forget the whole last year. Whatever, Gus getting fired. Forget say that Gus Malzahn leaves for Arkansas after this year. Which, like, if you listen to the podcast he just did with that at Arkansas convention, like, not out of the realm of possibility. And could you imagine if UCF hired Golish?
Is that what it was? Was it an Arkansas convention?
I don't know what it was. It was some sort of high school or Arkansas. It wasn't like the state. It was in Arkansas, and it was a convention. It wasn't an Arkansas convention. But could you imagine?
I was like, what does an Arkansas convention entail? I don't even know.
Can you imagine what Twitter would be like if UCF poached USF's coach? And I feel like he'd take that job too.
You would think.
New dream unlocked.
All right, last one. This could break the podcast. Austin Heff asked, would Christian prefer, here are the options, UCF wins 3 national championships in a row in football while putting out incredible, unique uniforms every game, but Olive Garden ceases to exist, or life how we currently have it. I think
Yeah.
everybody's listening to this whole podcast just waiting for us to get to this one.
So shout out to Austin Heff and shout out to Space Knights for putting me in this hell. I have a couple clarifying questions that he can't answer since he's not here, but
I'll answer it for him.
the number one question is the world gonna know that I had this choice? Like, am I publicly making this decision? Because that's
Yes,
gonna influence
yes.
the answer. I don't
Well,
think
then
that like that's gonna influence because then I can't. I would be killed if I didn't pick UCF. But listen,
it'd be so funny
all I'm
if it'd be
saying
so funny if it was a public decision and you still picked life as we currently have it.
all I'm saying is that Olive Garden employs almost 100,000 people across the United States of America, and you're asking me to fire 100,000 people for the sake of UCF, and I'm not sure that's fair. That seems pretty anti-people to me. I don't know.
Anti-people.
Anti-people. 100,000 people losing their job. That's crazy.
Anti-workforce, anti-people.
It's actually funny because there were some people
Anti-Italian.
there were some oh god, there were some people talking about this in the comments. And I think it was Mike MD Knight who said, "We all know that Christian's going to pick UCF, but," and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to pick. I still haven't really decided, so I'm going to talk through it in real time. Let me say first off that I need to clarify some things about the Olive Garden thing because I'm sick of every time this comes up on Twitter, which is like a lot. People reply and are like, "Christian, you need to go try a mom and pop Italian place, and then you'll understand." Or like, "Christian, don't you get the Olive Garden's bad?" Guys, I'm Italian. My grandfather was born in Italy and did the whole Ellis Island thing and came to America and opened an Italian restaurant. Like, I'm good. I've had really good Italian food. I understand. I don't go to Olive Garden and think, this is the pinnacle of dining. I know that it's Olive Garden. It's that I've been going there since I was a very young kid. It was like the first restaurant when I was like 3 that I like fell in love with. And it's just been a lifelong thing where it's like, that's my happy place. I love Olive Garden. I love going there and it's delicious. It's not good food, but it's fine. It's like all these people are like, oh, it's not good. So you're telling me if you can't go to a steakhouse and McDonald's, you have to pick? Olive Garden's great. I love Olive Garden and it's affordable. $6.99 or it's $7.99 now. For all you can eat soup, salad, and breadsticks. So I just want to clear. I stop telling me that there's good other Italian places. I know I've eaten at them. They're great. I just like Olive Garden a lot. So I don't know because truth be told, every time UCF won a national championship, I'd want to go celebrate at Olive Garden. I wouldn't
Oh my
be able to do that.
God.
So I'm not sure. Okay, here's the deal. I will pick UCF, but only if I can pick when this takes effect. Like, I don't want it to be now.
You don't want to be now, so you want to have enough time to where you can like slowly say goodbye to Olive Garden.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I would save it for like 2025 and then spend a year eating at Olive Garden like every day. I'd agree to it if I could do that.
You die.
I'd be fine.
I don't know if you would.
I'd be okay.
I'd be fine now. I'd be okay.
So that's my answer. As long as it's not like today Olive Garden ceases to exist, I will do it. I will allow UCF to win 3 national championships in a row while wearing amazing uniforms. I will let that
So happen. If it did happen today, you wouldn't do it. Like if he was like, okay, UCF will win the national championship in 2024, 2025, and 2026, but you've had your last Olive Garden meal. Or you can have one more.
Look, UCF's recruiting really well on their own. Gus Malzahn's a national championship winning coach. I think they can figure it out. I don't know if they need my help. We don't know.
I think they might. I think UCF might need your help to win 3 straight national championships. So I don't know if
I would do it.
Stumble into that on their own.
I would just be really depressed about it, but I would do it. Ugh, God.
You feel so dirty now.
I do. I feel like I need to go to Olive Garden.
God. Yeah. Well, good news. This isn't a real situation, so you can if you want.
I know. But now I get nothing. I had to think about that and get sad, and I don't get 3 national championships.
Turn on NCAA.
Yeah, there you go. EA College Football 2025 coming out in July. Very excited.
I'm still going to call it NCAA.
That's the only thing we're ever going to call it, but I am excited.
Yeah. EA College Football 2025. Like, I'm not doing that.
It's not good.
Get out of here. But yeah, it's coming out in the summer. That's great. That's kind of like the lead off of our football news, which I didn't even put it on here, but that's one thing to notice.
Can I just say a quick shout out to both the questions we skipped, I believe, were Charles Zollers.
Yes.
Who we're going to do that at some point. The issue was I started doing it for this podcast and realized it was going to be a whole podcast. And also shout out to Gasper Little Enjoyer, who said it would be fun to look at past UCF transfers, how their careers panned out. We'll also probably do that at some point as a full podcast this offseason.
Okay. Yep. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to everyone for the questions. We appreciate it. Every time we ask for mailbag questions. We get a good response, and we'll probably just keep doing them because of that. So
Yeah, we appreciate it, Tom.
and I have fun answering. Like it gives us a chance to talk about a lot of like different things, and it's fun. So
Stuff we wouldn't think of on our own. These aren't
right.
conversations that we would have. So it's just fun. I thought it was a good podcast. You guys, like I said, you come up with some really fun stuff to talk about. So this was a good one.
Especially when we're at the point in the off season where we are already. Like it's
Yeah.
like we're still waiting for spring ball. We're waiting for this other stuff. So
This
we
is the time
appreciate
to
it.
just have some fun hypotheticals about
Yeah,
UCF national championships and the merits of Olive Garden as a delicious place to eat.
exactly. All right. A couple pieces more football news. UCF hired Tampa Catholic head coach Jarris McIntyre as its director of high school relations. I
I
don't
like
know
that.
if I've like that's just a cool thing. I think that's like does everybody have a role like that? Because I think if they
I
don't,
mean,
they should. Like
UCF's
that's
making up
smart.
titles at this point, but I think that whenever you can take a popular high school coach and employ them,
Yeah,
I think that makes the other high school coaches more interested in your pitches and probably more
yeah,
gets your players more interested. So I think that's the thing that schools have obviously historically done. I think that was part of how Gus got his first job in college football. You hire a very successful high school coach and you build inroads that way, and it typically works very well. So I'm all good with
yeah.
that.
And he was an Auburn guy too, right? I think he
Yep.
was.
Yep.
Yeah,
Auburn player.
yeah. So that's gotta be cool just for him personally. I feel
Oh,
like
100%.
that's awesome.
That's the dream.
Um, Other piece of football news: the Big 12 will have their pro day, conference-wide pro day, March 27th through 31st. So I guess it's more pro days, but they said
Yep.
pro day, which I think we talked about this when they announced they were going to do it last year. Like that is the best idea that I don't know how anyone didn't have before.
It was a
Like
really weird thing where it happened, and even nationally, like some people were like athletic reporters and stuff were
you're
just like,
like,
"How
can you
did
do?
no
You
one
can do
think of
that?
this?"
Yeah, like
It's such a good
it's like,
idea. So it'll be
no, I think
interesting if it
it's really
has an
cool.
effect. Is what's going to be cool. Like if some player who didn't get a combine invite, obviously, or wasn't really on a radar, ends up as a late round pick or something because they had a strong, because they got more eyes on them than they would have if it just been a school pro day. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
And I do wonder what the schools aren't having pro days. Is that this is in place
Yeah,
of school pro
this is
days?
in place. Each school can bring. I think it's 10 to 12 players.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
then, yeah, no, that makes
So
sense. I was just gonna say I don't know how the whole selection process works out, but
well, you think about
that
all
makes
these
sense.
scouts instead of having to, schlepped to all these different schools, and some schools maybe you're gonna just have you'll. I'm pretty confident all 32 NFL teams are going to be there. So
Where is it? Wasn't this? I thought it was supposed to be in Jerry World, but I thought it said it was in Frisco,
is it in Frisco
which
now?
I think that's what it said.
Okay.
Which I don't know what that stadium is, but it's where they had the Shrine Bowl, I think. So
Yeah.
it's like an indoor. I think it's an indoor one. I don't know who plays. Is that where UTS? No, that's Texas
North
A&M.
Texas is in Frisco. No, maybe I don't know.
I don't know. Okay,
No idea.
whatever. Doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. Game of the week, which is games of the week. UCF softball. They had this big tournament in Clearwater, which I ended up going to one of the two games that they actually got to play because of the weather was horrible all weekend. And I went to the one they lost 2-1. They couldn't score any runs, and then I left, and they scored 21 runs in the nightcap, and they beat Wisconsin.
Then
So
all the games were canceled.
yeah, and then they didn't get to play Saturday. Didn't get to play either game on Sunday. Um, Hopefully better weather out this weekend. In California, I believe. I didn't even write it down. It's the Mary Nutter Classic. They play some really good teams. Thursday they have number 21 Mississippi State at 2 o'clock, and then Oregon, who just dropped out of the top 25 at 5:30. Friday they play number 11 Missouri at 8:30, and then Oregon State at 11:30. So if you're one of those people who can't sleep in the middle of the night, turn on UCF softball. Um, I saw that. I was like 11:30. I was like, I'll watch like an inning or two and then I'll probably pass out.
Yeah, I'll start it.
Saturday they play number 5 Tennessee at 8 o'clock. That's the biggest game of the weekend, and then they wrap up with San Diego at 10:30 on Saturday night. So another chance, like a chance that they'll have to play some really good teams, get some really quality wins that they were gonna have more chances at this past weekend and didn't get them because the weather didn't cooperate, which was unfortunate because a lot of games got rained out and
I was
it's a
very excited for those games too.
yeah, it's just crazy. Like the whole weekend's weather, just everything was. That's in baseball. We talked about it earlier. Baseball had Saturday. They moved it to. They were going to accommodate for it by like saying, "All right, we won't try to play Sunday because that's just going to be washed out either way. We'll play a doubleheader Saturday." They couldn't even get a whole full like an official game. They can call it after 5 innings. They didn't even get the 5 innings in
Yeah.
to call that an official game of the
To
first game.
to
So
play that much and then have it count for nothing sucks. I
yeah,
mean
it does kind of
that's
suck.
unfortunate, but
But yeah, UCF will go into this. UCF baseball will go into the week 1-0 after one game. They play Miami this week though, in the middle of the week.
it's exciting.
But yeah, UCF softball 6-2 going into this big tournament over in the West Coast. So all that tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Let's stay on UCF baseball. Tweet of the week is going to UCF baseball for their tweets where instead of, I don't know, having an ESPN Plus broadcast or even just a single cam setup where we could watch the game, we got someone's iPhone from the dugout posting random highlights and trying to tell us what was going on. So shout out to UCF baseball for the content instead of the broadcast. That was great for fans because, you know, if you're UCF, you might be wondering, why do we do this? Why do we have an athletics department? Why does this exist in the first place? And you might come to the right reason that it's literally because of the fans and that maybe taking away their ability to watch things isn't the right thing to take away. Or you might think, money. So shout out to UCF baseball for their very cool highlight videos. Appreciate that.
And I feel like it's important to clarify that like that we shouldn't blame UCF baseball for that. I'll blame UCF athletics.
Yeah, we won't blame UCF baseball
because I'm sure baseball does not want to. Not, I don't think they want their games to not be able to be watched.
Yeah, I think you are correct in that, and that I'm still now. Tweet of the week is still going to UCF baseball because they are the ones who tweeted these videos. So that's how I qualify talking about this as a tweet. But you are correct that UCF baseball is blameless in this, and I'm sure that they are on my side. Thank you, UCF baseball, for your support.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll get out of here. This has been a fun podcast. Thank you guys again for all of the mailbag questions. I always enjoy these. So, we'll be back next week. We'll have a little bit of a different schedule next week. I'm going to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, so we'll be recording earlier, leave it on Sunday. And so we have an early podcast next week for you guys to listen to. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We will talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.